Everyone, it's Pastor Justin here coming to give you our weekly insight into pastoral direction, leadership, and transformation. We've been asking these questions about Christian innovation, and we get to our final question today. How do we create spiritual meaning through shared stories of hope? We've identified the people that God has entrusted to our care. We've talked about and identified and described their longings and losses. We've identified the big lies that are barriers and walls between us. We have begun to practice hospitality that sees, hears, and puts our arms around people, that allows us to be drawn into one another, to connect with one another. And now we're beginning to talk about shared stories of hope, because friends, once we're in people's lives, we get to be storytellers, and we get to actually create hope. We get to create shared living together. And in so doing, friends, there is a deep sense of good news that is created. There are ideas that are shared. There are imaginations that are generated, and there are things that we actually begin to implement together as we address those longings and losses in them, and that we find out actually in us as well. And in so doing, we become storytellers. And those are stories of hope, of generating in generations. Those become stories that we pass along and say, guess what God's doing here in my life? Guess what God's doing here in this church? Guess what God is doing in the lives of the people that God has entrusted to us? And that begins to just build absolute speed and momentum. Before long, we have so many stories of hope and so much energy that we're like, oh my goodness, this is a fast ride. And before we know it, innovation is taking place all over the place, because we're not struggling through survival. Instead, we are thriving and taking so much in and on. Friend, these kinds of questions are the ones that help us to plant saplings, to put into motion all kinds of ideas. And some of those saplings won't make it, and that's okay. In the sapling business, it's about quantity, not quality. It's about planting all kinds of trees and seeing which ones take off. Because in the planting of the saplings, in the creation of hospitality, in the making of Christian community and connections, all of a sudden longings and losses are being met, and people are being cared for. This is the process of Christian innovation. Thanks for joining me.